Good afternoon, everybody. This is Robin Heron, your carnivorous grandma here, and we are on Carnivorous Grandma Speaks. I'm so honored and thankful to have with me Dr. Ken Berry and Nurse Neisha Berry today. Hi, guys.
Hello.
Hi, Robin.
Thanks for having us.
I'm so excited that you're here, so thankful. I really wanted to reach out to the both of you. I am definitely concerned about my community, and I want to make sure that I'm speaking to people who have the authority to speak. And Dr. Berry, certainly as one of the foremost voices in the carnivore community, I can't thank you enough. And Neisha, I've been watching you, watching you get dressed, watching you go shop, watching you with the kids, So I really appreciate it. I'm concerned for our families. I'm concerned for our health, and I'm concerned about the messaging that we are having in this community. So I wanted to have you guys both on. Would you go ahead and introduce yourselves?
Yeah. Go.
So my name is Neisha, and I'm a registered nurse turned YouTuber turned health coach. I found this way of eating through Dr. Berry, as most people probably who are watching his channel and your channel now did as well. Kicking and screaming because I had an autoimmune disease. I have Hashimoto's, but it's in remission now by being meat-based, whole foods, very low carb, and doing elimination diets to really understand what food groups affect my personal disease process. And so I teach that process, how to figure out where you fit on the proper human diet spectrum. And I really love this community. It's come a long way, but we got a long way to go, just like you said. Let you go now.
And I'm Ken Berry. I'm a practicing family physician. I've been practicing medicine for over 20 years. And I used to be severely obese and pre-diabetic. And I followed the recommended guidelines when I faced my obesity and pre-diabetes. Like, okay, dude, you're sick. You're a doctor. You're supposed to know how to be healthy. So I actually started following the guidelines, and it didn't help at all. In fact, it made it a little worse. And that was when I said, wait a minute, I think we've got a lot of stuff wrong here, and kind of went down the rabbit hole of trying to rediscover a proper human diet. And so I started sharing what I was doing and what I was recommending back in 2017 on YouTube. And it seems to have struck a chord. It seems to have helped many people. And that's my mission as a doctor, is to help people improve their health, right? So I'm happy to do that either one-on-one in the clinic or with a YouTube video that reaches millions of people. I think both of those are excellent strategies for doctors to help patients.
Yes, and I can't appreciate you enough. Actually, I was just talking with my mom yesterday. My mom is here. I'm just going to show her. Hey, Mom. So, we were just talking yesterday about how she went to the doctor, and she told the doctor that she was on a carnivore diet this past week. And the doctor did not know what that was, first of all, which she'd have to be under a rock not to ever hear about it. But she said she didn't know what it was. And also she told her that you have to have vegetables and fruits. You have to have fiber for your microbiome, your gut microbiome. And I just want to know, is that true?
No, that's not true at all. Hey, Miss Bernice, it's a pleasure to see you. But now let me say this: Miss Bernice's doctor is honest and intelligent and also well-meaning. But as we're all discovering, that doesn't mean that you're right. You can be completely and thoroughly wrong and have good intentions and have a good education background. That does not mean you can't be wrong. And so I would have given similar advice to your mom 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago, because I didn't know better at the time. The average doctor is very busy trying to stay up to date on the latest pharmaceutical studies that have been published, trying to pay the bills, trying to take care of their family and their personal life. And many, many doctors don't feel like they have time to look at nutrition, to look at the foods you eat and the foods you avoid. They feel like that's low yield. Like, I'm not, everything we need to know about nutrition has already been discussed. And they sum up their knowledge by saying eat lots of whole grains, eat lots of fruits and vegetables, avoid saturated fat, avoid red meat. That's the average doctor's advice to the average patient. And it's completely and wholly not only unhelpful, but also dangerous. And there are millions of patients around the world following that advice because they think, well, my doctor's very smart. My doctor cares about me. I'm sure they've looked into this. And there's the fault in the logic is I'm sure my doctor's looked into this, but as you can tell from your mom's doctor, who didn't even know what a carnivore diet was, she hasn't looked into nutrition very much at all, or she would have heard about carnivore, at least in a negative light, if no other light.
Right. So that's true. And I went to my doctor when I've been on carnivore since February 23rd. So just a short time, I'm a newbie really. But I did go to my doctor to get my labs done. She didn't ask me about what diet I was on. I've lost quite a bit of weight. My labs have, I would say they've changed pretty significantly because I was actually anemic all of my adult life. I was no longer anemic. And then everything, she said the labs were great, but she didn't even ask about diet. So I told her that I changed my diet. Matter of fact, I said, I changed my diet and I want to make sure that I'm not going to die. And she didn't even say, well, what diet are you doing? So, I don't think she wanted to get into that discussion about what we are, what kind of diet I'm on. Maybe she's not up on the nutrition research and that kind of thing. And I was just talking with Dr. Kiltz over the weekend, and he said, and I wonder if you agree with this, that we're really light years away from the everybody in the medical community knowing about these eating patterns and recommending them. So do you agree with that?
Yeah, I do agree with that, unfortunately. But I do think that every day we're seeing new doctors and other healthcare providers, nutritionists, dietitians coming on board with either keto, ketovore, or carnivore. But yeah, the vast majority of doctors either have never heard of them or they've heard about some negative aspect of them. And when a doctor hears something negative about a particular diet, that's it. They stop looking. They just accept that, just like every other human. And that's a basic concept that everybody listening to this needs to understand, is that doctors and nurses are just dudes and chicks. When it comes to their logic and the way they think about life and the way they learn new things, they have every defect that you have. They have every advantage that you have. They're not different. They're not demigods. They're not some kind of weird, rare creature. They're just dudes and chicks. And so if they've heard something, they saw an article on CNN about, carnivore diet will kill you. That's it. They're done. They don't look into that any deeper, although they should. And that's why you see this slow rate of adoption of a proper human diet. And I predict that we'll have new doctors and dietitians every single day. They're coming on board, but it's going to be a while.
I think I just lost your audio. Not sure what's going on with that, but yes, I did lose your audio. You guys can hear me though, right?
Can you hear us now?
Sort of. Yeah. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It is a little bit staticky. It's a little staticky.
Mm-hmm. Hang on, sorry.
No problem.
It's still bad.
While you're doing that, I'm gonna just put this up. It's still a little staticky. This is Carnivore Leo Rhonda. Yeah, it's a little staticky still. Sorry. Hey, Rhonda, welcome. I'm so glad that you're here. Rhonda says, good morning, Dr. Berry and Nurse Neisha and Robin. So welcome to the party, Rhonda. Thank you for being here.
Okay, how is it now?
That's better. Yes, that's better.
Sorry about that.
So Neisha, I wanted to ask you a little bit. You said that you had an autoimmune disorder, which I also have. I have eczema. And then I have I guess I'll call her a little niece. that has PCOS, which is also autoimmune, I do believe. So can you talk a little bit about that and how your diet has affected your autoimmune condition?
Yeah, so most people who get the diagnosis of an autoimmune disease, whether it be Hashimoto's or eczema or rheumatoid arthritis, get medicated first. And that's how I was treated after I finally got a diagnosis. And nutrition was not brought up at all. So I dove down the rabbit hole on the internet and tried to find other women that were in their 20s having these symptoms that did not add up. And once I did, then that led me to the AIP elimination diet. And then I did keto, which is a form of elimination diet. Then I did carnivore, which is like extreme elimination diet. And that's kind of how I found my way back to health. So the more restrictive I got, the more improved my symptoms got. And I tried to keep up with it as I went. I wasn't as good as I should have been, but I also didn't think that the results would be as significant as they ended up being. So that's how I teach anyone that has an autoimmune disease, is that you just move more and more towards carnivore, and then do carnivore for 90 days, like an elimination diet, and then reintroduce foods slowly over time to understand the reaction and the level, depending on how long you've had an autoimmune disease. Do you have other disease processes that could be affected by food? And so the more I restricted, the better I felt, until I'm not on any medications currently. And most of my symptoms are in remission. I still have a little pain here and there, but my brain fog, my fatigue, my joint pain, acne, hair loss, all of those things improved the closer and closer I got to carnivore. For me, I eat meat-based, which is just, most of my nutrition comes from meat, eggs, and then I have a few pickled vegetables, sometimes some fermented vegetables, and limited dairy. But that's where I fall on the spectrum. And I think most autoimmune diseases will benefit from doing carnivore, if not for 90 days, for maybe even longer than that. And just figuring out what they can bring back, if they can bring back anything. Because some people, just like Caleb Peterson, who have multiple autoimmune diseases, she needs to stay very ruminant based, and she has to do the spices, and that's where she falls on the spectrum. And so I just spent the last 6 years figuring out where I fall on the spectrum, and I understand that life can happen. In the future, I may have to make more changes, and that's just where I stay open-minded about, do I need to make more changes? Do I need to add more? Do I need to take away more? And understanding that we're all just trying to find our way back to a proper human diet. And the main thing is to stay away from all the unancestral foods, like the grains and the inflammatory foods, and obviously anything that's packaged and processed in a factory and slapped on a grocery store middle shelf, like cereals and all those foods that got us where we are. So I'm steady getting better every day and introducing some biohacking at this point, which is weird for me because I think that that's crazy. But
can you tell us a little? I don't even know what that is, biohacking.
So there's all kinds of biohacking. I just started the cold plunge therapy.
Oh, Lord, not the cold again.
I know. And so I think that it's just how I continue to push the envelope for myself and open my mind to the possibility. Just because something sounds crazy doesn't mean it's wrong. Carnivore sounded crazy to me a few years ago. It's not actually new and faddish. It just is more hyped up. We're getting back to basics. And so cold therapy, I thought, was very crazy, especially as someone who is coming from hypothyroid symptoms of being cold all the time. I don't tolerate the cold all the time very well. And so I'm just looking into even more ways to better my health, that like sleep and all of those factors, they come in and they're important too. But like Dr. Berry says, it starts with getting your diet right, and that affects your whole body, your mind, your sleep, everything.
Yep. And I've been studying the biohacking literature for over a decade. And so for anybody out there who's like, oh yeah, biohacking, I like that. I'm looking into that. Always remember that the most powerful biohack, 85% effectiveness, is getting your diet correct. That is the biggest biohack of all. The second biggest is being more active, using your muscles, exercising. That's the next biggest. The next biggest is sleep. And so when a lot of people, when they think of biohacking, they're like, ooh, I'm going to buy this pill that's supposed to do this or this, no, or this ice plunge, right? And it's like, yeah, that might matter a little bit, but the big three are diet, movement, and sleep. Those are the big three biohacks. And so a lot of people want to ignore those three because they're not a lot of fun and they want to buy that pill. And it's like, no, that's not how you biohack. You start with the most important things. Yeah. You know, that's like if your house is on fire, but you also have a leaf pile in your yard that's on fire. You don't ignore your house and go put out the fire in the leaf pile.
Right.
You put out the house fire first. That's the most important thing. And that's how important it is.
Right. I'm 6 years in before I ever entertained anything like that, because to me, that's in the weeds. If you can't eat consistently meat-based and get that right and get your mind wrapped around relearning nutrition, then all this other stuff, that's not going to take care of anything. Yep. It's just going to cost you money, basically.
That's really odd. I want to just ask this question. What is a proper human diet? Can you explain that, please?
A proper human diet is something that we're all rediscovering together. This is not a new discovery. What we're basically doing is rediscovering how a human being should eat. Every other animal in the wild on planet Earth, they know exactly what to eat and exactly what to avoid. Only humans are smart enough to be ignorant enough to not know what we're supposed to eat, right? And so what I'm about to say applies to people from every continent. It applies to a person of any color. It applies to any ethnicity. It does not matter. And here's why it doesn't matter. If you go back in time 300 generations, back in your family tree, Robin, or my family tree, we were all eating the same diet. Okay, the same 11 principles of a proper human diet applied to your ancestors 300 generations ago, exactly the same as it did to mine. It doesn't matter if you're from Africa, from Asia, from Europe, South America. It does not matter at all. And when we look at archaeology and anthropology, we see the evidence of this. If you go back in time that far, we were all eating a meat-heavy diet. So a proper human diet is by definition low in carbohydrates. High carbohydrates foods are excellent fallback foods. They're excellent starvation foods. So if you're starving, yes, eat all the rice and beans. And that's exactly what our ancestors used those kinds of foods for. You want a diet that's low in carbohydrates if you're trying to optimize your health. You want a diet that's very nutrient dense if you're trying to optimize your diet. You want a diet that's very uninflammatory so it doesn't cause chronic inappropriate inflammation or it doesn't flare up an autoimmune condition. You want a diet that human beings have been eating for the majority of our time on this planet, honoring the evolutionary principle that what we've eaten for 99.5% of our time on this planet, that is our proper human diet. And that anytime you look far enough back in the scientific literature, you find it was lots of fatty meat. And then if we were starving, we added some plants to that. Now, also another thing is that it's uninflammatory. And so a lot of people think that when you ferment vegetables or you ferment dairy, that does something magical to them. That somehow makes them more nutritious. When the fact of the matter is, it's very clear in the research that the reason humans started fermenting soy and fermenting vegetables and fermenting dairy was not because it made them more nutritious. It's because it made them less inflammatory. It didn't add any nutrition at all. It made them less inflammatory. And even in Asia, if you go back a few generations, no one ate soy until it had been fermented. My great grandmother on my dad's side died of pellagra. which is a B3 deficiency. She lived in rural Virginia, very poor family, and they were eating processed corn. And so, the majority of your diet each day would be processed corn.
Mhm.
Well, any culture that ate lots of corn, and there were multiple ones, but they knew that you had to do something to that corn. And so they would put it with lye. And there's things you can do that cause it not to be inflammatory, that cause it to not suck the B vitamins out of your system, that actually make the vitamins and minerals in the corn more accessible. But poor rural American farmers didn't know that back in the 1920s. And so it is actually, pellagra was the biggest cause of death ever from a nutritional source. And it took scientists, modern scientists with their labs and all that, it took them years to figure out what pellagra was. They knew it was related to food, but they couldn't figure it out. And that's because ancient cultures never just ate corn off the cob. They never ground it up and got rid of the germ and got rid of the hull and just ate the fleshy part of it, the starchy part. They never did that. They had learned through the millions of years of trial and error, that's not how you do it. If you're going to eat corn, you have to treat it a specific way or it will cause disease. And that's been proven time and time again with other nutrients as well. Many plants contain anti-nutrients that lock up the nutrition in plants. And if you don't ferment those plants, if you don't soak them, if you don't sprout them, if you don't cook them for a long time, then you're not going to get any meaningful nutrition from them at all. And you run the risk of causing inflammation or the flare-up of an autoimmune condition.
Is there any plant that a person should eat without fermenting them?
The plants that you can, the plant parts that you can eat without fermentation or without sprouting or soaking or something like that is the part of the plants that the plants want animals to eat.
Okay.
And because if they don't want you to eat it, they're going to put phytochemicals in it. They don't want you to eat their seeds, definitely. They don't want you to eat their leaves. They don't want you to eat their roots because that will make them die. What do they want you to eat? They want you to eat the fruit. And so the only raw plant foods we ever eat are berries and then fruits from plants. And so again, there's two principles here. You want your food to be uninflammatory, and you also want it to be low in carbohydrates, right?
Okay.
Many of us are coming to this to either reverse prediabetes or diabetes, got a touch of sugar, want to make that better, or to lose weight. You got to count the carbs to do that. You got to have it very low carb. But then also the other part, the inflammatory part. The plants want you to eat the fruit so that you'll scatter and spread the seeds. Right? They don't want you to eat the seeds though. And so, we have blueberry bushes here on the farm. We have raspberry brambles. We have a pear tree and a plum tree. And every summer when those are ripe, Beckett and Bonnie, they eat those. They love them. I ate a few. I don't think it's a big deal to eat those in limited quantities. But if I eat too many, that'd be too high in carbs for me. Right? So Paul Saladino is right in that respect. That is the part of the plant that the plant doesn't mind if you eat. It actually encourages that. But you've got to count the carbs and you got to consider the fructose content because that matters as well.
And also a lot of people come to this way of eating after years and years of overconsumption of sweet things that even if they ate fruit, which is arguably the healthiest version, it would send them down the road back to where they're trying to get out of and a sugar addiction or consuming too many fruits in a short span. And not everybody can tolerate that, especially if you've gone decades with diseases. It's not that you started out with fruits without all the packaged processed cookies, cakes, and candies, you could tolerate the fruit. But now we're not there anymore. We've pushed past that. We have diseases, and you have to consider how those healthy sugars affect you and your diseases and your mindset too.
Right. I think about, people that I know, I'm not going to mention any names, that will get a whole watermelon in the summertime.
Yeah.
When they're real good and eat
I
the
love
whole
them.
lot.
Yeah, they're delicious.
Eat the whole thing. That's
absolutely.
a lot of sugar.
It is a lot of sugar. and not much nutrition at all. Although you'll read articles, oh, watermelons are an excellent source of this, that, or the other. When you actually look at the nutrition charts, it has almost no nutrition at all when you compare it with the sugar content.
Wow. Well, thank you for that answer. Can you tell us how you're eating, Dr. Berry?
I'm 99% carnivore right now. Everything I eat comes from animals. Every now and then I'll have a berry with Beckett or Bonnie, or I'll have, some little amount of plants, carbohydrates here and there, but 99% carnivore, meat and eggs is how I'm eating right now. And so I was keto for years, and that helped me lose a ton of weight, helped me reverse prediabetes. But it didn't get me where I really wanted to be. It was only when I lowered the carbohydrates more, and that's an important thing for lots of people to understand. Carnivore is just the lowest carb of the low carb diets.
Okay, right.
Does that make sense? So it is a ketogenic diet.
Yes.
It's just the lowest carb version. And so for some people, that's the most important part of carnivore, is that it's as low in carbs as you can get. Because if I went back to eating 50 total grams of carbs a day, low carb, I would gain weight on that. My A1C would go up on that, because I have to be as low carb as possible. Whereas for Neisha, the main benefit of carnivore is the uninflammatory part of it, right? Eliminating all the phytochemicals that were causing inflammation. That's the big part of it for her. So I'm 99% carnivore. What about you?
Right. So a lot of people don't understand that you have to take into consideration where you're coming from, why you're coming to this way of eating, because it is different, but it's the same at the same time. Like we're both human, right? We both would do best on a low inflammatory, animal-based, good quality protein, good quality fat diet. But the difference is what happens when we stray from that. So don't overcomplicate it. I am meat-based. That's what I call it, just so people don't come for me in the comment section.
I saw that video. I was cracking up.
So I am mostly carnivore. Most days are just meat with some seasonings. I left from seasonings and sauces. But that's a lot. That's no one coming from standard American diet would be like, that's not carnivore. It's when you get into like the purest
carnivore space. Yeah.
Carnivore space. Like you can't have sauces, you can't have seasonings and stuff like that. So I just don't use that word. I just use meat-based. This is the proper Neisha diet. And I eat this way consistently, and I'll eat this way for the rest of my life, because what would happen would not be just to gain a few pounds or my A1C would go up. I would literally get deathly ill. I could not function. I could not raise my kids. I could not do my job. I could not be a good wife. And knowing that keeps me on the path every single day. And I'm not saying that I never flub up, but I know I'm never going back. Ever.
Yeah.
And
same here.
Let me add one additional thing to that, Robin. People with an autoimmune condition, a lot of them, their doctors never told them this. If you have one autoimmune condition, you're at increased risk of developing a second or even a third autoimmune condition. So it's very likely that if Neisha went back to eating the high carb, highly inflammatory crap, definitely her Hashimoto's would come back with a vengeance. But she's also at increased risk of developing a second one, like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, MS. And so it's just not, people say, oh, it's so restrictive. I feel like having Hashimoto's and MS and rheumatoid arthritis, that's much more restrictive than just enjoying a meat-based diet full of healthy fats and healthy, delicious proteins.
Right. I agree. Okay, I have a question in the chat. I'm going to go ahead and bring this up. The Carnivore Caddy, hi, welcome. My doctor says I have gout, and it's because of my carnivore diet. Any thoughts?
Yeah, I have several thoughts. First of all, I have a video on my YouTube channel about gout and what actually causes it. It's been known over 200 years what increases your risk of having a gout attack. And I talk all about that in my YouTube video about that, but we'll sum it up to say it's too many carbs, it's too much fructose, it's chronic inappropriate inflammation, and it's alcohol. If you eliminate those things from your diet, you're just not going to have gout flare-ups anymore. And then also, I see a lot of patients and a lot of doctors misconstruing what gout actually is. They'll say, oh, I've got joint pain in my elbow and my knee and my toe, and it just bothers me every day. Newsflash, that's not gout. That's not how gout presents itself. Gout presents itself in one joint the vast majority of the time, and it is the most severe pain you've ever had in your life. And so carnivore cabbie may not even have gout. Now, carnivore cabbie may have elevated uric acid, but then carnivore cabbie's doctors should know that there are people who have gout who have a normal uric acid. And there are people with very high uric acid levels who never have a gout attack. Uric acid is associated with gout, but it is not causative. Or you wouldn't have somebody with normal uric acid having a severe gout attack, and that actually happens. And so don't worry about your uric acid level. Worry about, are you having 10 out of 10 OMG pain in one joint? That's a gout flare-up. Just having joint pain is not gout. And so, and then if you want further information about that, and then also the studies I've referenced in the show notes, watch my YouTube video about that.
Yes. Okay. Thank you very much for that response. I love this right here. Homesick Buckeyes here. Hey. Shout out to the only berries in my life, Ken and Neisha.
Hey, Buckeye. How's it going?
Here. He has the question, metabolically, is there truly any difference between someone that eats 0 carbs a day and someone that eats less than 10 or 20 per day? It seems like it's a meaningless difference.
Right. And that kind of goes back to what we were just talking about. The difference between that 0 carb and the 20 carb are where those carbs are coming from for a lot of people. If those carbs are coming from a keto product or dairy, or something that is outside of the 0 carb spectrum, then that can either show up in weight gain for some people, falling off the wagon, inflammation. It's a little more complicated than just the carb count. We do focus a lot on that because anyone coming to this that's new, that's the big difference for them in the beginning, is they're going from 150, 250 grams per day to 20 total grams per day. That's a huge
it's a huge difference.
Yeah. And go ahead, babe.
And that makes a huge difference in the beginning. And then people start to focus on where the carbohydrates are coming. So you can do keto and have some products, right, for a time and see some success. A lot of people do. But then they hit a stall, or they plateau, or they're not continuing to see benefits, or maybe their symptoms are still there, but they've lost weight. And that's when they decide, oh, okay, maybe I need to take a look at the ingredients list. Maybe I need to tighten up on where my nutrition is coming from and not just the carbohydrate intake, because that's the full spectrum there. It's not just about the carbs. It's where those carbs are coming from and where your nutrition is coming from.
Yeah. And for 70% of people out there, Homesick Buckeye, he's right. That's not a big difference. And for the 70% of people, meat heavy keto is going to be, that's going to be all they need. That's going to reverse their prediabetes, reverse their fatty liver, reverse their fatty pancreas, improve their arthritis, lower their blood pressure, help them lose weight, improve their brain fog. That's literally, they can just eat keto the rest of their life. They're perfectly fine and happy. But there are a few people who they need to go even lower carb than that, or even more uninflammatory than that. And so that's when we talk about the ketovore and carnivore, we're talking to that smaller subset of people who need that for optimal health. Not everybody needs that. I totally agree with Homesick Buckeye on that respect. Now, but also a lot of people are wanting to lose weight as quickly as possible, as quickly as is healthily possible. Because if you want to lose weight as quickly as possible, then you take Ozempic and have gastric bypass surgery. But that's not healthy. That's not right. Long term, there's going to be bad complications from that. So to do it healthily, carnivore is going to be a little quicker because it's even lower in carbs. For people with severe flare-ups of autoimmune conditions, they're almost in a medical emergency type situation. They want to get that inflammation down as quickly as possible. Carnivore, or maybe even lion diet for that. Does that make sense? And so, but for the vast majority of people, Buckeye's exactly right. 20 grams is probably low enough for most people.
So I did try, I mean, I was on keto for a very long time. And I found it not to be sustainable for me because of my carbohydrate addiction. So I would turn around in 2 years and I've gained all my weight back. I lose weight, gain weight, and yo-yo dieted basically my whole life. So I feel like carnivore is definitely the way to go for me. I do have eczema and I have like anxiety. I had extremely high anxiety. And, I guess they call it being high strung. I just worry about everything. If anybody called me on the phone, I would be like, oh no, somebody died. Something has happened. I just realized the other day that, that's pretty much going away. I'm not having the immediate negative thought.
Isn't that
So
nice? Isn't that
it's
nice that
awesome.
negative's not your go-to reaction every single time?
Right. But I thought it was normal. I literally thought that that was a normal state of mind. And
Yep.
then I noticed I was like not able to drive anymore. I just kept getting, it kept ramping up and up and up. So, I was like, I'm gonna try carnivore because of you, Dr. Berry, actually, because you
Yep.
didn't die. So I was like, yay, he's doing good. So
Yep. And the
so
more
yeah.
I do this, the more I really love Nisha's idea of using 90 days of carnivore as just to start there. Maybe
Mhm.
wean down the carbs to get there. But I think that needs to be most people one of their very first interventions, because that gives you a new gauge of just how good you can feel.
Right.
And then after 90 days of carnivore, you can say, okay, I really miss broccoli, or I really miss cashews, or whatever. Well, you've been clean carnivore for 90 days. Now you can add those cashews back in, or the broccoli, and immediately your body can give you feedback as to whether that's a yes or a no. And
Yes.
so even people who are, especially people on keto, who are like, yeah, it's helped me some, but it's not miraculous. It hadn't really done as much as everybody else acted like it would do. You need to do 90 days of beef, butter, bacon, and eggs. And then you can go back and reintroduce and figure out what the problems are so you can put those on your no-go list.
The key to doing 90 days of carnivore is to understand why you're doing it and really dedicate yourself to that reason. If it's just to lose 5 pounds, you're never going to make it, because your why is not strong enough. And
Yep.
carnivore is not hard, but it is difficult to get away from the other things. It's not that carnivore is hard. It's the addiction to everything else, and thinking you need variety, and variety is the spice of life, and those things that people have told us, eat the rainbow, all those
Yes,
things.
I was thinking that exact thing.
Right. They creep in, and you start thinking, yeah, but that's not the point of 90 days of carnivore. 90 days of carnivore, how good can you feel at the end of these 90 days? And I always tell everybody to take a baseline of their symptoms, how their sleep is, like everything. Document it, write it down in your memory. You're not going to remember how bad it was. Write that down, and at the end of the 90 days, then you can see if it did help you, where it helped you, and then you can make an informed decision on where you want to go from there. And I would say probably 50% of the people who go through my 90-day program come out on the other side wanting to just be mostly carnivore most days.
Yep.
And then every now and then maybe cheat on carnivore with a vegetable.
Yeah.
Which I think is amazing, right?
Yeah.
And they always say, well, I had a salad the other day. I'm like, okay.
If that's the
That's
worst
the worst
you
thing you did.
Right.
Huzzah.
You didn't go to Krispy Kreme and
Right.
all that is a huge win. And most people, once they do the 90 days, they've almost broken that carbohydrate addiction, and they know that they have, and they don't want it back. So that keeps them going, similar to like my autoimmune keeps me going. So again, that why you're doing it, what are the benefits that you're going to get out of it? That's your motivation, but it's also your dedication. And then that's what keeps you on that path consistently, hopefully, for the rest of your life.
Yes.
Right. That's what I did. I did 90 days. I knew I would do the 90 days because that's what you guys recommend. So I just jumped off the cliff on February 22nd. Within 30 days, I had diarrhea for a full month during that time. So I wanted to talk a little bit about that. But after 30 days, I knew that I would not go back. And I was feeling so much better. still had a couple of things in my life like the sweeteners, and also I did recently quit coffee, so I also want to talk about that. But I knew I would do 90 days. And so and the things that I'm dealing with are worth it to me to try it for 90 days. I figured, you do all kinds of things for 90 days. Why
Yep.
not try to obtain, your best health in
Yes.
90 days? So what do you say to somebody that says, try it for 2 weeks?
Well, it's just not enough time. The human body takes time to heal. And if anybody's ever broken a bone, they know 2 weeks is not enough time for that to heal. It just doesn't work that way. And especially for people who have been metabolically sick for decades, what you're going to do, what's going to happen is they're going to try it for 2 weeks. They might feel a tiny bit better, but not much, because they could also still be in the midst of carbohydrate withdrawal symptoms. And then they're going to quit. And then they're that person on Facebook or on Twitter saying, well, keto didn't work for me. Carnivore didn't work for me.
Yep.
Well, you only tried it for 2 weeks. No, nobody who has any sense or knowledge would ever tell you to try it for 2 weeks, because we know that's not enough time for your body to heal.
Right. So let's talk about those physical reactions to switching from either keto to carnivore or from a standard American diet to carnivore. Like I said, I had diarrhea, and I just wonder if there was something that I could have done to tweak and kind of get that to stop. So, because I just knew I was going to do it for that. I knew it was going to be 90 days. So I just stayed the course on it. But a lot of people might give up if that happens to them. So I wonder how to deal with that.
Yeah. A lot of people are very focused on their bowel habits, and they want to talk about that at the restaurant. They focus on it. They obsess about it perhaps. And for some people, having diarrhea for several days or for a couple of weeks, that's a deal breaker for them. But what's going on there is that you have trillions of bacteria in your gut. They're supposed to be there. But for those of us who have been carb addicts for decades, you're colonized with all the wrong bacteria. And indeed, many of those bacteria lead to chronic disease as well. When you stop the carbs, those bacteria rebel. They go on strike. They start breaking stuff and setting things on fire. And one of the ways they protest is diarrhea. But you just got to understand that during that process, the good fat-loving, protein-loving bacteria that are actually going to help you with true long-term health, they're upregulating. They're increasing in numbers. And at some point, they'll take over and they'll evict the carb-loving bacteria. And that's what happened for you. And the day that happened, your bowel movement started to return back to normal.
Okay.
I also see sometimes this helps and sometimes it doesn't. It just depends on the person. But a lot of people, if they do the ketovore challenge a month before they go carnivore, that kind of eases the body into it. So instead of doing every single day carnivore, you would do 5 days a week carnivore, and then you have 2 days where you can add a vegetable or a non-carnivore food once a day. And that kind of gives you a little bit of a titrated lowering of the carbs. That can sometimes help. Some people just have an extreme reaction to going carnivore.
And then anybody who's had their gallbladder out, they're much more susceptible to diarrhea from any cause. And so what we typically see, the people with the severe diarrhea that lasts the longest are people that converted to carnivore overnight. And so Neisha's advice, I think, for many people is mandatory to follow it, is over the course of a month, slowly transition, and then wind up doing a month of ketovore, and then go do your 90 days of carnivore. And that gives your gut bacteria more time to adjust, and you don't have that rebellion that you have when you go to carnivore overnight.
Okay, very good. I want to talk about the kids. Beckett and Bonnie, they're so cute. I just want to know, what should kids be eating? I have 11 grandkids, and they all eat a standard American diet, which is quite concerning to me, of course.
Yes, should be.
But when they come to my house, what should I be feeding them?
Meat.
Okay.
So
go ahead.
Yes, that's the easy dad answer. So for any moms or grandmas that have kids or grandkids that eat a standard American diet and you're wanting to make a change, depending on which one you are, grandma, then mama has the reins most of the time, but you can provide really good nutritional meals when they're at your house and teach them. They listen to grandma. I listen to my grandma more than I listen to my mama, to be fair.
Right.
And so you have a strong pull on their emotions and their memories and all of that. And just cooking with your kids, cooking with your grandkids, and teaching them about ingredients and the nutrition in food and why God gave us, all this different food and which ones make us feel the best. And, the donuts and cakes, that's not real food. That's special treats that we maybe have on occasion, but they don't make us feel good and they don't make us run fast and they don't make us smarter.
Right. Yes.
And just really developing that relationship with what food is and the difference between something that makes us feel great and something that makes us feel crummy. That's what we do. I don't just say, candy's horrible and you're not allowed to have it. And Susie over there, you shouldn't be eating that. That's not how we come about it. We just talk about meat makes us strong, meat makes us smart, and really candy doesn't make us smart. And it really hurts our, I talk about cavities. He's had a friend have a cavity, so he knows how bad that can be. And I just, he calls them sugar bugs. And so we don't eat sugar bugs because we don't want to get sick. And he came up with that on his own. The kids they're just sponges. They're going to soak up everything you say. So as long as you're speaking from your heart and you're teaching them things and really getting them in the kitchen, I think makes the biggest difference because they really love being a part of adult things, and cooking is an adult thing. So many parents don't allow their kids in the kitchen. And I guess they're going to make a mess, but they're making a mess everywhere else anyways. Might as well and have fun and make memories. And you can make memories without baking cookies.
Yep.
You can make steak, you can make sausage rolls. There's all kinds of recipes out there that I have with the kids. That Maria Emmerich has an entire book for kids recipes. I mean, the resources are out there for sure.
Yeah. And I want to say one thing for families of divorce. A lot of people are like, well, I only have the kids, 4 days a month. Is it really going to make a difference if I feed them a proper human diet versus what they get at the other parent's house? My answer is absolutely yes. And so if you just think of the food that they're getting at the other parent's house as slow poison, what your question actually is if I feed my kids less slow poison, is that better for them than if I just feed them the same amount of slow poison? 100%, yes, it's better. Now, obviously, we would like for them not to eat it at all, but you don't have any control in the other household. So every meal that you cook for them that is predominantly meat and eggs with the yolk, and then also you're having a gentle, loving conversation with them about, like Neisha said, meat makes you smart, meat makes you fast, meat makes you strong, meat makes you have beautiful skin. You're not going to be talking negative about the other home, the other parent. That doesn't help anything. That hurts the kids. What you're going to be doing is a 100% positive message. You're a human being, and human beings perform and look and smell the best when they eat a proper human diet. And if you approach kids with that loving message, that informative message, not a negative message about the other household, that's going to go straight to their heart, whether it's from a dad or a mom or a grandmother or an aunt or a great grandmother. That's going to go straight to their heart, and they're going to remember that even if they're trying to forget it. They can't help it. They're hardwired to remember what their elders teach them.
Right.
So never think you're having no effect. You absolutely are having a positive effect.
And kids, they know how to say no.
They definitely do.
Kids saying, no, I don't want to eat my vegetables, like kids will do. And then teaching them to say, no, I don't want to eat the pasta. I just would like some meat sauce, please. And some vegetables.
Yep, same thing.
Beckett says no, thank you all the time to things. He already has that. He knows what decision he wants to make. If we don't make it for him, he just knows that I shouldn't be. I had enough of that. Like Halloween, he got candy. He gave me the candy. He gets some fruit. But he doesn't just sit in the refrigerator and eat a whole thing of grapes, right? He gets a little cup and he doesn't even eat the whole thing because he hasn't been doused with sweet taste his whole entire life. He has that governor
Amazing.
switch that's like, okay, that's enough of that. And no, I don't want any
Mhm.
more. Thank you.
Yep. And I
That's
think that's an
absolutely
excellent point, because when kids haven't had that limitation of carbs, when they just
Mhm.
grew up on Pop-Tarts and Lucky Charms and Eggo waffles, it breaks that governor. It breaks their
Yeah.
ability to know, oh, I shouldn't eat too much of this, because they've been eating too much of this their whole life. And so a lot of
Yes.
people come to keto or carnivore as adults, and that governor's been broke for decades, right? Their mama broke it when they were little, and they just kept it broke this whole time. And so those people have to literally relearn how to eat. They have to relearn what being hungry actually means, and relearn what satiety actually means. And so the fact that you can have an impact on a young child, even for 2 meals a month, 1 meal a month, or what you take to the church potluck,
Mhm.
that makes a positive difference. That absolutely matters. Don't stop doing that.
Awesome. I do still have one more question in here, and then I have a list, and I just want to go through the list and have you talk a little bit about each one of these, if you wouldn't mind. So, Homesick Buckeye asks, how do we deal with our standard American doctors? What do we do?
Well, you first of all realize that your doctor is not your daddy. Your doctor's not your boss. Doctors are just dudes and chicks. They can be wrong just as quickly as you can, especially about things that they haven't studied about.
Mhm.
And so for most people, that's all they need to hear. And then they need to see a friend like you, Robin, or like Neisha, who has used a carnivore diet, a ketovore diet, a keto diet, to completely reverse a medical condition that the doctors have been managing for 10, 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
When you see something like that and you realize doctors are just human, immediately you're like, oh, okay, so they're wrong about that. I wonder what else they're wrong about. And that just kind of brings a normal, healthy cascade of questions. Wonder what else they've got wrong. And when people start down that road, I think it's a very mentally healthy road. And it also is a road that leads to good physical health as well.
Awesome. Okay, let's go to my list. So, I had a question specifically from a family member about cholesterol and cholesterol causing plaques in the arteries that cause a heart attack.
Yep.
What's the story with that?
Yeah, it's just not true. The body uses cholesterol when there is damage inside of the arteries, when there is inflammation. Your body uses cholesterol kind of like Bondo or spackle to try to stabilize and repair that. And so when doctors see cholesterol in the wall of an artery, they're like, oh, see, this cholesterol is causing heart disease. And that would be like if you went to an old house that a carpenter was fixing up, and you're like, oh, look at this spackle here on the wall. That's causing holes in the wall.
Oh, wow.
No, the carpenter's using the spackle to try to stabilize and repair the hole in the wall. That's what the body's using that for. And so when you start to think about these things with a different mindset, you're like, the human body makes more cholesterol each and every day than most people eat. Why is the body making all that cholesterol if it's so dangerous? It looks like our kidneys would secrete lots of cholesterol, but the kidneys recapture and keep it in the bloodstream. Your body doesn't want to get rid of it. It needs that cholesterol. And so to think that cholesterol is bad for you, if you think about biology, it's silly. Your body doesn't make cyanide because that's poisonous. Your body does make cholesterol because it is needed for hundreds, if not thousands, of things in your body to function properly. And it also uses it as a repair molecule in arteries that have been damaged.
Okay. What about kidney disease and people who have had kidney replacements?
Well,
Can they do a carnivore diet, or should
they
they?
absolutely need to eat a proper human diet if they want to keep their remaining kidney, or they want to protect that kidney that's been donated to them. They absolutely never need to eat a high carb diet, because we know without a doubt that the leading cause of kidney failure, the leading cause of being on dialysis, is type 2 diabetes. And which is a disease of carbohydrate intolerance, where if you eat too many carbohydrates, your blood sugar goes up, your insulin goes up, and you damage the organs in your body. And so anybody who's only has one kidney left, or they got a donated kidney, or they have some degree of chronic kidney disease, You need to protect your remaining kidney function like gold in the bank. And the way you do that is by eating a proper human diet that's very, very low in carbohydrates, so that your blood sugar never goes up to a level where it's going to damage the kidney, because that is the most damaging thing to a kidney. That and smoking crack and drinking too much alcohol. You need to avoid all those things in addition to eating a high carbohydrate diet, because that will damage the kidney.
Okay. What about heart disease, AFib, and for a person who recently had open heart surgery? What should they be eating?
They need to be eating a proper human diet. It's known in biology that the muscle cells of the heart actually perform and function better when they're burning ketones and fatty acids than when they're burning sugar. And we've seen hundreds of people in our private group and online whose heart failure got better. It got less severe when they adopted a ketogenic or a carnivore diet, because they're now burning ketones and fatty acids instead of their heart having to burn the less efficient sugar. Also, sugar, we just said, the reason for kidney failure is that sugar damages the lining of your arteries when it's too high, too long, too often. So that goes for every artery in your body. The arteries feeding your brain, feeding your heart, feeding every single part of you. You're going to do damage to those arteries if your blood sugar and your cholesterol or your insulin are always high. So you want to eat a diet that keeps them from being high, and that is a proper human diet. Let's do one more question, Robin, and then we have to run for another appointment.
Absolutely. Oh my gosh. Is there any condition that cannot be helped with a proper human diet?
The perfect question.
There are a few conditions, like if you've had a leg amputated, the proper human diet will not help you regrow that leg. Okay.
Okay.
If you've had some permanent thing happen to you that can't be taken back, a proper human diet can't fix that. But if what you suffer from is caused by chronic high blood sugar, chronic high insulin, or chronic inappropriate levels of inflammation, or it's a chronic autoimmune condition, then you're absolutely going to benefit from some degree by eating a real whole food, meat-heavy ketogenic diet, or a carnivore diet, or a ketovore diet. You are going to get some degree of benefit from doing that.
Any last words, Neisha?
Bring it home, Neisha.
Just that don't overcomplicate it. What we're saying, take the labels away, and what is it? Real food. What we're meant to eat, the stuff that's been here for thousands of years, what we've been provided by the earth, what came here, what did not come from a factory, those kind of things, and getting back into the kitchen. That keeps people from being able to see what we're really saying. If they don't cook, if you're getting stuff out of the freezer section, you're missing the point. Once you grasp making your food and understanding what ingredients go into and taking that control back. We've been cooking for thousands and thousands of years without the freezer section at Walmart. And when you realize what we're saying is just eat the real stuff, it doesn't sound that crazy. And then those questions like, can I eat a proper human diet with kidney disease, start to not make sense, because it's not the meat and the vegetables and even fruit, depending on where you fall on the spectrum. It's the stuff that's been poisoning us for the last 100 years. All these new products, if it says keto on it, it's probably not the best thing. Real whole foods, counter total carbs, focus on the best protein you can get, which doesn't come in a box or a tub. Comes from the meat section, right? And not overcomplicating it, and don't worry about it being grass-fed, grass-finished, the most expensive cuts. Get what you can afford, eat within your budget, eat as clean as possible. Cooking is going to save you money, and just understand that the more complicated that you make it, the harder it feels, and just focus on those fundamentals that we talked about today. Real whole foods, really good protein and fat, and stay away from the processed crap.
Yep. And don't ever forget, if money's an issue for you, you can do an excellent keto, ketovore, or carnivore diet with hot dogs and bologna. That absolutely, that's 1,000 times better than anything you're going to buy in a cardboard box in the middle of the grocery. Yeah.
Well, I know that you guys have to run, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you being here. Thank you so much for accepting my invitation. I hope that we'll get a chance to talk again sometime. I have a show that's starting up. I'm hoping maybe we can get you guys on, and I'll reach out to you and we'll see if we can figure that out. But we really appreciate it, and I just love you guys. I love what the work that you're doing, and I appreciate everything that you guys are doing. So thank you so much for being here.
Our pleasure.
Our
Thank you.
pleasure. Thank you so
All
much,
right.
Robin. Talk to you next time.
Bye, everybody.